Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/am I the asshole for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my thoughts and opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Majestic Possible 350. Am I the asshole for refusing to give my sister my Wi-Fi password after she accidentally gave it to her boyfriend? So I, 27 male, live in a small apartment above my parents' garage. My sister, 25 female, still lives at home. We've always been close-ish, but lately she's been bringing her boyfriend over constantly. A few months ago, she asked for my Wi-Fi password because the signal upstairs is better. I gave it to her. A week later, I noticed the internet was sluggish. I checked my router and saw 7 new devices connected. Turns out she gave my password to her boyfriend, just for one night. But then he gave it to his friends so they could download something quickly. I confronted her. She laughed it off and said, "It's just Wi-Fi, don't be so dramatic." I changed the password. She found out, got mad, and told my parents I was being petty. Now they're telling me I should just share because it's family. I said I'll happily share if she promises not to give it to anyone else. She refused, saying I can't control what people do, so I refused too. Now she's sulking, my parents are annoyed, and I'm getting side-eyed at dinner. Am I the asshole for not giving her the new password? Honestly, just tell your sister it's just Wi-Fi, don't be so dramatic if she's gonna have that kind of attitude. Now, I'm gonna kind of break this down in a second here, but Reddit gave this as not enough info, but I highly disagree. Here's a quick comment that adds additional context that I feel kind of just adds to the statement that they're not the asshole. WildTicket1413 comments, info. Were your sister's boyfriends and his 6 friends camped out in your garage? Because in order for them to be connected to your Wi-Fi and using your internet, they'd have to be in range of the signal. And the signal range of a typical router is around 150 feet. OP responds, they all hang out in the main area below my apartment. It's right above the garage, which is detached from the house, but very close. Economy Voice, 7358 responds, if your parents are giving you the side-eye, tell them that your sister's boyfriend and friends aren't your family and you're not providing Wi-Fi to all of them because your sister can't respect a reasonable boundary when you did her a favor. Then remind them that not only are your parents also her family, they are her parents and you're not. So if they want their precious adult baby to have better Wi-Fi, they can provide it. Not the asshole. So additionally, definitely not the asshole, but there is a massive network security risk of having it so that way a bunch of people are just on your network. That's not even mentioning the fact of there were enough people using the Wi-Fi to noticeably slow down the bandwidth. They're not paying for the Wi-Fi, OP is, and it's to a point where he's not able to use a service that he is paying for because his sister is just handing it out willy-nilly, and she won't even agree that I will let you use the Wi-Fi if you don't hand it out to other people. She can't even agree to that. And that's a pretty reasonable request. Any kind of networking solution, by the way, that would essentially allow the sister to use the Wi-Fi but no one else, that just puts extra strain onto OP. As an example, and sorry for the technobabble here, if he were to limit the MAC addresses that were being established in the router, then yeah, that would work. Sister could use it and no other unapproved devices would be able to. But that also means that anytime OP gets something that uses Wi-Fi, he has to log into the router and add its MAC address, which essentially is like a identification number for a device, just to put it simply. And him having to do that just to placate his sister's inability to not share the Wi-Fi password is fucking stupid. Pure Chef 8438. Am I the asshole for only taking care of my kid? I was with my ex-wife Amy for 4 years. We have an 18-month-old daughter, Wen. We got divorced last year. Amy has a 6-year-old daughter, Ella, whose dad isn't involved. During our marriage, I took on the brunt of the money stuff because she was a stay-at-home mom our whole relationship. The whole time, I treated Ella no different than I treated Wen. I got her everything she needed and I cared for her as a parent should. Once we split up, we split 50-50 custody of Wen. I pay her insurance as well as pay her monthly payments by choice as I make more money than her. I want our daughter to have a comfortable life. My issue is my ex-wife is feeling some type of way because I no longer want to fund Ella's life. When I pick up Wen, it's not a secret. We go off and do fun stuff like the zoo or whatever else we can get into. Wen also often gets new clothes and shoes. Amy feels it's not fair that I won't maintain Ella's life anymore after 4 years of doing it. that I've abandoned my daughter. I feel she's no longer my responsibility. I know Amy cannot afford to give Ella the life we used to give her, but why should I have to do it? I talked to my mom about it, and she thinks I'm a massive asshole as she sees Ella as her granddaughter, just as much as she sees Wen. So am I the asshole? If so, I'll eat it and continue to help with Ella. So before we get into comments, the first question that I would have on this one is, were you offered 50-50 custody and declined it? Or were you never given the opportunity for 50-50 custody of Ella? That would be my first question, because that would determine a lot of how I would answer this one. Now, there is a comment from user Microwave Popcorn, and it's a bit of a comment chain, but I feel like it provides some pretty good additional context and just views of this whole situation. Legally, you're entirely in the clear. Morally, you're the asshole without a doubt. Either you only pretended to love and care for this child for 4 years, or you're beyond callous to cut off all contact just because you have no legal obligation. User Bud Buffalo responds, say he did/does care for her. I think he can occasionally take Ella out with his daughter, but why should he pay a dime? Why shouldn't his ex-wife be pursuing child support from the child's actual father? Answer without insults or attack, please. Sith Stress 1 responds, let's put the money aspect aside. OP is the only father Ella has ever known. He was there for her for 4 years, and now all of a sudden he's gone from her life, but not her half-sisters? How would that make you feel? Would you want a child to feel that? Sea Lions Are Funny responds, also it's their cake day, their anniversary for their Reddit account. This, not to mention the only dad she likely remembers being that she's 6 now, and he's been around her since she was 2. I feel so bad for Ella. This has to be destroying her. Hell, I'm 40 years old, and if my mom and stepdad, who met and married after I was an adult, split, I would be crushed if he just cut me out of his life completely. OP, stop taking your feelings for mom out on the child and continue loving her and caring for her the same you did for the only life she remembers. Currently, you're the asshole. So back to my original comment on whether or not he was offered custody or declined it. If he was offered custody and declined it of Ella, I would say he is without a doubt the asshole for not just stepping up and continuing being the father to Ella as she's only known. Now, if OP was never offered any kind of custody split for Ella and he doesn't want to pay for a child that he wasn't even offered custody of, I can understand that. It really entirely depends on whether or not he was offered any kind of custody of Ella. That is the entirety of my perspective. Legally, he is without a doubt in the right in any scenario in this case, but morally, it is definitely questionable. And if his wife is the one who did not give him the opportunity to continue having that relationship with Ella, so therefore he chooses not to continue paying for Ella's lifestyle, I understand that. But then the argument could then be made that he is punishing Ella for her mother's decisions, and that is definitely a whole can of worms that could be explored, and could potentially put this into everyone sucks here category. But if he chose not to, then yeah, he's definitely the asshole without a doubt. Far Oven 6023. Am I the asshole for correcting my mother-in-law at a family gathering that she didn't recommend my daughter's name? It was my favorite name. I've been married to my husband for almost 2 years, and our daughter is 11 months old. When we found out we were having a girl, one of the names that was immediately top contender was the name of a character I really like in a popular book/movie franchise. My husband is a huge fan of the franchise too, and with time, that name just became the only one that I wanted, and we landed on it, and then told our parents about it. I remember my mother-in-law questioning whether phonetically there would be an alternative spelling that could cause confusion, and I had said no, it wouldn't, and had explained to her the subtle difference in pronunciation, and it was a whole conversation I'd had with her. Last weekend, we were at my in-laws' place for a dinner. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law were there too. So we were watching my daughter, cruising along the room, using the couches as support and looking at us to see if we were looking, and then laughing. My brother-in-law's wife had remarked how radiant she looked and how she'd really taken to her name literally. My sister-in-law then said that it was a really good choice by my mother-in-law. I was confused. I asked what she's talking about, and my sister-in-law said that my mother-in-law had been the one to recommend the name. Right? My mother-in-law then said, yeah, that she'd said it was a good name. I was literally stunned for a second and then made it clear that I'd come up with the name, how I'd known of it, and that my husband also knew of that character, and that we were dead set on the name. There were no recommendations to be had. I asked my husband to corroborate the story, which he did. Uncomfortably. My mother-in-law said names are a collective family effort, and everyone pitched in. But I still said the name was one that was very dear to me, and it was one I'd come up with. Maybe I shouldn't have pushed on that a second time, that's why I'm here. When we came home and we were in bed, my husband had been getting texts from his mom and sister. He said I was right in my account of what happened, but he also told me I'd been tactless, that we know it was my name, and our daughter has a beautiful name that suits her. Why make it into something that causes bitterness? And today he had a phone call with his mom, just a regular one. I asked if she was still pissed. He said she was. He said that he understood why I did it, but it wasn't the time and place. Was I the asshole? Update, my husband came by this on his Reddit feed. Fuck my life. He wants to let us all know he never said I was an asshole. No, but he took neutrality. The problem with staying neutral on something is why you're not explicitly saying someone's the asshole. If there's something going on where someone is clearly at fault and you choose to stay neutral, you are by default picking to be on their side, and that's kind of the problem here. Now, overall, and I just kind of want to point to what OP stated and how they worded it here, the mother-in-law was very quick to try and jump in and correct sister-in-law's recounting of it, because she said, oh, mother-in-law recommended it. And mother-in-law, trying to, I guess, muddy the waters a little bit, stated that, yeah, she said it was a good name. But the way that the sister spoke on it made it sound as though the mother-in-law behind the scenes was taking full credit for choosing the name. And then when caught in front of everyone, she tried to downplay it and muddy the water. The mother-in-law is upping her involvement and her importance in this situation and trying to make herself seem more involved than she actually is, and when called on it, gets really uncomfortable and confused and essentially Darvos it. Actually, quite fucking literally. She denies the sister's retelling events. The family then goes on the attack to go after OP for being tactless or just really focusing on this and pushing it. And that of course everyone knows she's the one who came up with it, despite what sister-in-law blatantly said. And then reversing the victim and offender because now it's, oh, it was tactless, this wasn't the time or place to do this, and yada yada yada. But just additionally, if it wasn't the time or place to correct someone when they blatantly just said something that was wrong, when do you actually correct someone on it? When is the time and place to correct someone on that? Like if someone just says something incorrect, when is the time and place to correct them on it then? If it's not when they blatantly just say it right then and there. I hate that logic. It's so dumb. Agreeable Sky 9983. Am I the asshole? My roommate says I can't move out until after her wedding. I, 34 female, have been living in hotels and with an ex-partner for the last 4 months because my apartment tested positive for mold, which I'm highly reactive/allergic to. At the same time, my 5-year-old dog suddenly became severely ill. Her x-rays showed alarming inflammation in her lungs, and overnight, she was struggling to breathe. I packed a suitcase and left immediately, thinking the mold was affecting her also. My plan was to find another place to stay while our landlord remediated the house. Devastatingly, only 2.5 weeks later, my dog passed away. Her passing was extremely traumatic for me, but I will admit those details. I was in a very, very dark place. Not only did I lose my best friend and was living out of a suitcase, I also found out some unfortunate news regarding my own health, all while being unemployed and living on savings and some generous help from my ex-partner. The night my girl passed away, my ex insisted I move into the extra bedroom of his apartment so I wouldn't grieve alone. He assured me that I could stay as long as I needed to get back on my feet, as well as my house to be safe again. We get along super well, and I'm so grateful for his help. The whole time I've been here, both of my roommates have been constantly asking when I was coming back. Mind you, I've been paying my $2,200 rent plus utilities this whole time. I live in San Francisco, LOL. My answer has always been the same. I'm not coming back until the house is remediated. Unfortunately, something was delaying the process of it all. Last week, I finally decided that I no longer wanted to pay rent for a place that I wasn't living in, especially because I was still unemployed. I knew the timing of my notice was less than ideal because my roommate, Kate, 46 female, who is the master tenant and responsible for finding a replacement tenant, is in the throes of planning her wedding, amongst other things like talking to a surrogacy agency and immigration for her fiancé, and I feel awful. I knew that she wasn't going to take the news well, but her reaction was far more unexpected than I thought. When I told her I was moving out, a 7-week notice, she said that the timing didn't work for her, that I was being unkind. She threatened to keep my deposit if I didn't push my move-out date by another month. When I told her that was illegal, she started to freak out and told me that our friendship would be over. I was in shock. She said, "You knew about the wedding for months!" But I honestly didn't have the mental clarity to make that big of a decision until very recently. I told her as soon as I knew. I can't help but feel horrible and guilty, but all my friends are telling me 7 weeks is more than fair and she is the one being a bad friend. I just have no idea because they are obviously biased. I'm just so tired of being a people pleaser and I would essentially lose over $2,000 to make it convenient for her. Am I the asshole if I don't push my move-out date by another month? Your friends may be biased because they're your friends, but they are in this case absolutely correct. There's a comment from Queen Ashiba 99. Not the asshole, but I don't understand why on earth you are paying rent to the landlord if it's tested positive for mold. You should all be renting an Airbnb together or something and not paying for an unlivable house. OP responds, I know. Mold affects people in different ways and unfortunately I'm just super sensitive to it. My other roommates aren't affected at all, which is why a bigger action wasn't taken. I was glad to get out of there. The grief really prevented me from thinking about the situation clearly, but it's all hindsight. Queen Sheba 99 responds further, have any of you spoken to the landlord? That could solve both of your problems. They should be giving you a month of free rent or reimbursement for the months you couldn't stay there. It doesn't matter if it didn't affect them as badly as you. It's still a health hazard that they are required by law to fix. It does really suck because OP's roommates are definitely just taking advantage of her, in full, without a doubt. They're grieving, they're probably being affected by the mold because mold does affect mental clarity and can cause mind fogginess. It's not good to have in your house. And that's on top of the already obvious sensitivity that OP has. And again, on top of her grieving the loss of her pet, who probably potentially died from the mold. Her not being in the headspace to make an immediate decision is understandable. But for her to turn around and give a 7-week notice? That is an insane amount of generosity. 7 goddamn weeks for them to find a replacement tenant. That's insane. The fact that you're only given a 4-week notice for eviction and she gave 7-week notice of her leaving? That's already generous enough. Like, I know that their roommate Kate has a lot on her plate with her wedding and all the immigration stuff, but 7 weeks? That is a lot of time. OP is definitely not the asshole. From Kate threatening the deposit, from 7 weeks apparently not being enough, to Kate refusing to delegate that task to the other roommate while she deals with all of the other shit on her plate if it really is that much, to just additionally OP losing their pet because of the mold and the roommates choosing to do nothing about it beyond just waiting for the landlord to get around to it, forcing them to have to move or just stay somewhere else for a little bit, all while paying their share of the rent and utilities? OP is too kind for their own good, and they need to get out of this situation just as quick as possible. 7 weeks is more than enough time, and if Kate can't figure her shit out in 7 goddamn weeks, that's her problem, not OP's. They've already done everything they can in this situation. Beyond that, if anything. Kaz. Would I be the asshole if I tell my friend I don't like being around her kid? I, 32 male, have a female friend, 29 female, that has a kid. I'm at the point where I want to tell her to not bring her kid around me. This will be difficult because the kid has grown really fond of me. The child is 4 years old, but I don't like how she's allowed to behave. She is still breastfeeding at that age, and she isn't properly potty trained. To clarify, she can sometimes use the bathroom on her own, but other times she just soils herself. She doesn't have any mental challenges. On top of that, she has a cell phone that she's glued to constantly. All of this annoys me, but since she's not my child, I don't comment. I mind my own business. The bigger problem is that this child cannot take no for an answer. When she's with her mother, she bullies her by crying hysterically until her mom gives in to whatever she wants. You might wonder how this affects me. Well, the child often cries hysterically for my laptop or smartwatch. I'm not rich, and I can't afford a kid to break my things. Once, her mom left her with me briefly while she went to grab something from the car. During that short time, the child reached for my prescription glasses. When I refused to give them to her, She threw such a historical tantrum. The cries were so loud and gut-wrenching that people thought I spanked her. Will I be the asshole if I tell my friend I do not like being around her kid? Edit for more context, she's a single mother and I have no romantic interest in her. Comment from user Inky Black Ops. Not the asshole for not wanting to be around this kid, she sounds like a nightmare, but I wouldn't say, your kid sucks and your parenting sucks, outright, even if it might be true. I'd approach it by telling your friend you prefer to try and schedule more time without the daughter around. If she pushes the issue, you don't have to get into details. But you can just say that being around her daughter is overstimulating and stresses you out. If that bothers her, she's probably not a great friend to begin with. Throw it away forever responds, this is the way. Tread very, very carefully with what you say to your friend about her kid. Because sometimes parents can get real sensitive, stubborn, and deep in denial about their oh-so-wonderful offspring who can do nothing wrong, lol. Another comment from user Aquitalian. I was in a similar situation, but I cut off the friend instead. I couldn't handle it anymore. She was a neglectful asshole and her kid was insufferable. I let her have it before I left though, lol. She tried to hit me with you don't have kids, you have no idea. LOL, which is fair, but I don't need to have kids to know what she was doing was lazy and neglectful. Von Snoodingham further responds, the classic child-free quip for that is, I've never flown a helicopter before either, but if I saw one in a tree, I'd know someone fucked up. I love that little insert there. It's a fun way of putting it. But OP would not be the asshole if they wanted to distance himself from the child, especially if that's the kind of behavior that the parent is allowing. Now, whether or not they should go scorched earth and pretty much be like, hey, the way you parent your kid, it's insufferable. Fix it, or I'm not going to be around anymore. Or perhaps just taking the gentle approach and trying to be more just kind about it and see if they press the issue. Either way, it's going to be a difficult conversation, but, eventually she's going to have to learn that her kid's behavior is just not okay. If you were in this situation, how would you handle it? Miss Crippen. Am I the asshole for calling out my mother-in-law? Content warning for water injury. Necessary backstory. In 2020, one of my children had a near drowning episode that really affected me. I've been in counseling since. My mother-in-law has made drowning references ever since, and it really bothers me. She'll say things like drowning in work. She compares the time my niece went to the ER with a skin rash to when my child went to the ER after he was revived. And most recently, you are really in with your head underwater in regard to my busy schedule with my kids. Know that this was her biological grandchild who it happened to. I called her out on it, and in my opinion, I was gentle. I told her that I don't appreciate drowning references as that was the worst day of my life and I don't care to relive it. She later told my husband that I made her cry, and she knows that she just messes everything up and won't talk to me anymore. Eye roll. And that it has been so long since it's happened, she's forgotten about it. My husband says that I'm policing her speech and I can't expect everyone to be mindful of my own trauma. I also think it is a dig at my parenting to say things like I'm barely treading water or in over my head in water with my kids. I can honestly say that the drowning in work phrase is a common one, and while it doesn't affect me so much when randos say it, it really bothers me when someone close to me says it. And I've never heard the in with your head underwater besides from her, but she swears it's really common. So, am I the asshole? So Reddit deems that this person was the asshole, but there is one aspect of this that makes them not the asshole in my mind, and it's the fact that they believe that they were gentle about it. I'm going to give OP the benefit of the doubt that they were just trying to inform mother-in-law that, hey, when you make comments in reference to drowning, it really fucks with my head, could you please avoid them? That's a reasonable thing to ask. That's not something crazy. Yes, to compare things to being drowning in work or having your head barely above water, we're modified in this case to having your head underwater, or just those general metaphors to drowning are fairly common. But her reaction is a bit extreme, and honestly, I think it's fair for you to ask her, someone who is very aware of what happened in your past, to just avoid those kind of phrases around you. That's reasonable. That's fair. And as long as it was gently asked, I have no problem with it. It's because of the gentle approach and OP's wording here that I don't agree with the asshole decision. Now, additionally, I just want to add, it's really fucked up to compare a skin rash where 99.9% of the time, it's not going to be nearly on the same level as someone who is just revived from a drowning incident. Those two are on two entirely different levels, and I can definitely understand and sympathize why that comparison would be so frustrating. Upon further reading and just checking this one, I don't agree with Reddit calling OP the asshole here. I think that them just simply asking for mother-in-law to police their language kindly on a very traumatic and tragic event is not that crazy of a request. And then for mother-in-law to ham it up and break down crying that she just messes everything up and won't talk to OP anymore, that is an insane reaction from the mother-in-law's part, in comparison to just simply what OP asked of them. Honestly, it feels like they're trying to divert attention away from OP and their trauma and their grief onto themselves, and Reddit fucking fell for it. Available Rabbit 815. Am I the asshole for not letting my girlfriend lower the temperature in our home any further? My, 28 male, girlfriend, 27 female, live together and we like to turn the thermostat down at night so we aren't hot while sleeping. We usually keep it on about 68 degrees, 20 degrees Celsius, and once we wake up, I'll turn it back up to 74 degrees, 23 degrees Celsius, for the rest of the day, then repeat again at night. I'm fine with keeping it on higher at night, but she prefers it pretty cold at night. I have a decently large home, and we live in the south where it's 80s for the lows right now, so the electric bill is pretty high. I pay all of the mortgage and utilities and have been trying to cut down on my home's expenses. We agree I'd buy a window unit for the bedroom that we could run at night just to cool that room and keep the main thermostat on 74 24/7 in an attempt to save some money. Not only that, but I usually wake up a few hours earlier than her and begin working in my office, and I'm freezing with the cold air still running on me. She will not let me turn the temperature up until she is out of bed. Well, a few nights in of using the window unit, and she's saying it's not getting cold enough. She's been getting up in the middle of the night and turning the central air down in addition to having the window unit running. I suggested I could get an oscillating fan to blow on her in addition to the ceiling fan that is already running, but she says it triggers her asthma. I refuse to run the central air at night anymore. Am I the asshole? Too long didn't read, my 28 male, girlfriend 27 female, won't let me run a window unit in our bedroom at night instead of running the central air. I want to save money instead of running the central air unnecessarily. Am I the asshole? Reddit is in the boat that he's the asshole. I'd say he's conditionally the asshole. I would definitely say the first thing that you can do that would be a mutual compromise if your expenses are the main concern here is ask your girlfriend, hey, if you want it to be cold tonight, are you willing to chip in on the actual utility bill so that way we can afford to actually have the air running at night? That's honestly probably the best solution for both of you, in my opinion. The next thing is that I just want to add, some people, like myself, needed to be cold to sleep. I like sleeping at 65 degrees. Hell, there have actually been studies that show that sleeping in a colder environment from 65 to 67 degrees is actually better for your overall health and can lead to a more restful sleep. So honestly, what you might be dealing with is your girlfriend having to wake up multiple times throughout the night, turn the thermostat down, and then go back to bed, is not getting a restful sleep, which is then leading to the cycle of her being in bed longer than you and needing the AC on for longer. Perhaps, if it was colder at night, she would be able to be out of bed earlier, which would allow you to be working in a more warm environment, and that could help solve that problem additionally. Sleep is something that really should not be compromised on because it can affect overall health down to not only how you are from a day-to-day basis, but it can also just drastically increase your risk of so many different complications throughout your body. In my opinion, the compromises should be focused on trying to find ways to help her get a better sleep that also doesn't trigger her asthma, rather than trying to cut specifically on ways that wouldn't give her a full night's rest. And one of those solutions would be that if she needs it to be that cold, she should then help with the utility bills if they are getting that out of hand. I would also recommend looking at getting a dehumidifier, especially in the south, potentially one that's installed into your whole HVAC unit, because humidity increases the total amount of effort it'll take to cool a room down, because water has an extremely high thermal capacity, which means it holds heat more than other materials. So you end up in a position where because it's so humid, it takes more to cool the room down than if it wasn't humid. That's more of just a recommendation. I would say is that if OP is kind of the asshole, but I understand where they're coming from. If he's unwilling to split the utility bill with his girlfriend to offset the cost of that, then he is definitely the asshole. But if he offers to split the utility bill and she says no, then she's the asshole. But how do you feel on this one? I'm definitely taking more of a solution approach rather than looking at the actual relationship dynamic here. So, is there anything you noticed that I may have missed, or what are your thoughts and opinions on this one? Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.